Good evening, folks. I'm going to call to order the regular board meeting of the Marin Municipal Water District for Tuesday, December 5th. Terry, could we get a roll call?
Yes, good evening, Director Larry Russell.
Here.
Director Matt Sampson.
Here.
Director Jed Smith.
Here.
Vice President Ranjiv Kush.
Here.
And President Monty Schmidt.
Present. Okay, could I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Fantastic. Are there any public comments on the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, could I get a roll call vote?
Director Russell.
Aye.
Director Sampson.
Yes.
Director Smith.
Aye.
Vice President Kush.
Aye.
And President Schmidt.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to announce that we will have a closed session after the regular meeting items. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda items?
Yes, we do. Mr. Ed Jamison. Go ahead, Mr. Jamison. And then after Mr. Jamison is Mr. Clayton Smith.
Thanks. It's been a year now since the three new board members took their seats. I just want to thank them for committing the time to master a steep learning curve and quickly get up to speed. With the two carryover board members, we have a very capable board with complementary differing backgrounds. MMWD's 191,000 customers are really fortunate to have you all watching out for water security. So a big thank you to all 5 board members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clayton Smith, please.
I don't see the clock, but
Great.
I'll start anyways. This concerns an issue that I believe lies at the foundation of the endless disruption tax and ratepayers have to endure regarding, in general, public financing. As a consequence, tax and ratepayers face an unnecessary amount of volatility and uncertainty in their attempts to budget for their future taxes and agency-provided services bills. The problem arises, I believe, out of poorly managed property logs and the lack of sufficient regard for proper calculation of depreciation schedules on the real assets they have invested in their tax and ratepayer funds in. If this were corrected, the serial complaints of not having sufficient money in their tills to pay for needed replacements and maintenance to continue their operations would not occur. I feel that in Marin County, this has reached the point of a scandal. In private industry, enterprises are required to account for the cost of their fixed investments in a property log. Each entry in the log has a service life assigned to it, and its cost is expense as a depreciation item over the term of that item's service life. This process provides tax shelter against future income so the entity can accumulate funding for replacement when the item is worn out. Failure to do so is cause for an analyst of the business to question its viability as a going concern. Absent tax consequences in government entities, this appears not to be the case. In an accounting sense, they seem to act as though they are flying blind, with resulting periodic crises in infrastructure financing. During periods of very low inflation, this can be tolerated for extended periods of time, especially for very long-lived assets. However, it cannot go on forever. This needs to come to an end. From an accounting standards perspective, government entities need to start behaving like private enterprises with regard to their fixed investments, passing their true costs gradually along over time, which would honestly reflect the situation at hand. This can should not be kicked for political convenience further down the road. I feel the tax and ratepayers deserve transparency, understandability, and accountability in government finance. For the sake of the public interest, these budgetary shocks must stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. There are no further speakers.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Okay, can we get directors and general managers announcements? I'll start on my right with Matt.
Thank you. I'm actually good tonight.
Ranjit?
Thank you. Few items. First, a quick report from our Communications and Water Efficiency Committee special board meeting that was held on November 15th. During the meeting, staff provided an update on development of the draft Water Efficiency Master Plan. An updated draft plan will be brought back to the board sometime next year. And I just want to remind the public that they may access and view the video recording of the November 15th committee meeting from the district's website. Second item is that Larry and I both attended the North Bay Watershed Association board meeting on December 1st. Larry, I'll start with the main activity, which was a presentation by Warner Chabot, Executive Director of the San Francisco Estuary Institute and Aquatic Science Center, on why we need bold regional governance and finance innovations to underpin advancements in climate science and engineering. Now, long title, but there were a couple of striking points he made. His claim was that our adaptation needs by 2050 are going to total $110 billion for activities like wetlands reconstruction, infrastructure changes, for example, replacing portions of Highway 37 with raised causeways. That's just one example. And he also calculated our assets at risk here in the Bay Area at about $236 billion. So it was a pretty striking presentation. I'm not sure if there were immediate take homes out of that, and other than the continual need for action. But there was one other item, a short update from the North Bay Water Reuse Authority. And Larry, I'm not sure if I got this right, but it sounded like they act as a partner or a resource for obtaining grant funding to support water recycling development. And
I think that's accurate.
And I just thought, if staff are not in touch with them about those issues.
We're a member.
Yeah, we're a member, but I'm not sure if we've been coordinating with them.
There was a problem with Title 16. It cut off at the Sir Francis Drake. Don't ask me why. It's a geographical definition from Congress, and that the grants stopped at Sir Francis Drake. So most of our district is below that. So that meant only things like CSMA related stuff we could even apply for. So there was never one that hit. Most of the money was gathered for places like Napa and Novato Sanitary. They got money, and the pipeline that they ran up to feed reclaimed water from Las Colinas and Novato both got money from that. So, and I thought that was interesting today. We had a meeting with North Marin Water, and I thought it was interesting when I asked Tony about what's the split, and he didn't know between how much water they get from Las Colinas, how much they get from Novato. I thought that was kind of interesting. Apparently they both discharge in the same line, and then it just blends. And
13% summer,
that was total, but the split between the two, where they take the water from, they didn't know, which I thought was kind of interesting. Anyway, but that's, it's just a group. It has no standing. What they have done is they've hired Brown and Caldwell as a consultant and spent a lot of money chasing. That's what they've really done. And because it has the sanitary agencies, in addition to the water agencies, it's bigger than NBWA or any of those things. And it's pretty well funded because of that blend of agencies. So it's like 25, I don't know, maybe more members than that. A lot.
Well, we do have an active project in their hopper currently, the CMSA San Quentin project, and we're pursuing it via them for funding.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it was an interesting learning for me, at least. Last point I want to make is that I think we all saw the news last week that EPA announced a proposal to strengthen its lead and copper rule. And their proposal, if it does pass, is to require water systems to replace lead service lines within 10 years, including locating legacy lead pipes, improving tap sampling, And I was just curious to know to what degree that's going to affect us, maybe something for future discussion.
Yeah, it's very briefly, of course, it's not on the agenda. The first step was requirement to assess your own system, water agencies. We did that and didn't find, my understanding, any lead pipe or appurtenances. The next step that is now underway is investigating to identify materials on the private side, the service laterals. And now EPA is saying, yeah, the step after that will be to replace those that you find. It's interesting. I mean, it's kind of a bold move from EPA. You know, they presumably just, okay, how are we going to get this done and put it on the agencies? It doesn't seem terrible, but we'll see how that rule plays out. So far, we haven't found lead laterals, and if we do, they aren't going to be pervasive. So I don't think for us, it's going to be a big deal in terms of cost. And that step I mentioned of investigating and assessing if there are any lead laterals, that's already required and that's currently in play.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too that the AWWA initially came out. I've been involved in this for 25 years and hold 2 patents on it about alternatives to removing them, how to solve the problem without removing them. But AWWA initially said there weren't any. Now, the last number I heard was something like 30 million. And Florida is the highest.
Florida in the Midwest.
Yeah. I was shocked at Florida. I mean, they're talking about like 13 million in Florida. News to me.
These are laterals?
Yes. The connections between the main and the user.
Right. Downstream of the meter to the rest of it.
Yeah, it's a company called National Lead went on a rampage about 1895 and went to places like Flint, Michigan and others and got agendas passed, ordinances passed to say you only use lead laterals. And they did. So
In many aspects, they're a good material. Flexible, don't corrode. Of course,
no, but they knew. National Lead was a terrible player. They understood the leaching. People have known about that since the Romans. There was nothing new there. It was a very self-serving thing that they did. And, but, you know, I assume we probably still have lead, cast iron, you know, caulked lead. And sometimes there's a thing called a gooseneck that comes off of the main and it makes a turn that can be in lead. I don't think we have that, but we do probably have the lead caulking, which doesn't really touch the water, but it's right there. It's put in between the pieces of cast iron pipe to make them seal.
Thanks for humoring that. That's a bit of a digression there, but thanks.
Okay. Jed?
Thank you, Monty. Couple of report outs. One is that we did have a quick update on the Marin City new pipeline project internally, and we're talking about next steps with the team, specifically about how we can address the exact issue that you guys are just talking about, how we can help shift some of the grant funding that we have received is to go towards understanding from the meter to the homes and how those pipes are impacting the health and well-being of Marin City. So we are not responsible for that, but we are going to help understand the depth of that issue. And I'm proud that we have helped spearhead that grant funding and will help see that project through. So thank you, Ben, for your leadership, and we'll look forward to taking next steps there. I also went to a West Point Inn campaign. I am a life member, so full disclosure, I'm not promoting anything, but I just want to report out that the West Point Inn is doing a capital campaign that's fairly significant, hundreds of thousands of dollars that they have not done ever. This is on our land, and they're looking to improve both water efficiency, but also fire risk mitigation and making that institution last for many decades more. So proud of that association. I've been able to meet with recently in the last few weeks. I think it's been almost a month since our last board meeting, with Supervisor Rabbit from Sonoma, with Councilman Healy, who's been in his seat for, I think, 25 years in Petaluma, with Natalie Rogers, with Chris Rogers, and then today with the North Marin Water General Manager Tony and two of their board members, Steve and Mike. And I would say the overarching message that I am hearing is an openness to talking with Marin about a broader regional view of how we look at water supply, how we look at partnering together, how we go after federal funds together, state funds together, and put together our strategic roadmap so that we're thoughtful partners, not competitors. We're in the same region. And I would say I'm seeing nodding heads, thoughtful people looking to work with us. And I was proud to sit next to Larry Russell by my side, and who has these relationships over time. And I think we have some really interesting potential and future with North Marin. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that dialogue opens up again. That's all.
Cool. And I was proud to sit next to you. I thought you were a good input to that meeting. In the past, there have been joint board meetings between North Marin and MMWD. I got a little chagrined at the meeting because I realized that the last one that I remember was when Jared was still on the board. And that means it had to be like my first or second year of being on the board. So like 18 years ago, I would have said it was 10 at the outside, but as I started to speak about it, it was clear it was a lot longer ago than that. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. On Friday, November 17th, we had an operations committee. There was a project that was referred to the board to install 4,300 feet of new pipe, which will replace pipe that was installed back in 1913, a date we all remember, I'm sure. It was, as I had referred to the board. Staff also provided an update on the district's recycled water program. The update covered the district's current recycled water operations and ways to potentially expand that. Potential opportunities for indirect and direct potable reuse projects were also discussed. Staff will continue to evaluate and prioritize reuse opportunities as a component of the overall water supply roadmap. The public can access these reports on the webpage. It was interesting. I was at Perry McCarty's funeral about a month ago, I guess now, at Stanford, and I ran into Rhodes Trussell, we were talking about San Diego. They're the primary consultant in the DPR, IPR, whatever you want to call it. And his comment to me was very funny. I've known Rhodes for 50 years, maybe longer than that. And he was telling me about how expensive it is to do purple pipe system, basically. And I go, yeah, well, of course, but that's obviously talking words from San Diego, that, oh yeah, you got to do this because I was talking to him about the change from Vicente Reservoir to Miramar, which is Vicente is what I proposed and which I think makes sense. They've now moved it to Miramar, which is real close to town and much, much, much smaller. So a whole different kind of project than the old one. So it's kind of interesting, though, to hear the same talking words that have been tossed around for years and years. Okay.
Ben?
No comments tonight.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll move to our consent calendar. Can I get a motion to adopt our consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any public comments?
There are none.
Okay. Can we get a roll call vote?
Yes. Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Yes.
Director Smith,
I,
Vice President Kush,
Aye.
and President Schmidt.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we're going to move to our regular items. And the first thing up is our strategic plan update, development update.
Yeah, it's there. That up there too. Did it get out? Ready? Yeah.
Good evening, Board. Adrienne Mertens, Communications Public Affairs Manager. Lead on the work on Marin Water Strategic Plan. We're back again for our next meeting, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Charles, our consultant, who's from the Catalyst Group, who's been assisting with development of the plan.
Thanks, Adrian. Good evening, directors. So we're back. We just saw you just recently, but we're back with two more goals for more detailed discussion. And I'll just start again with the high level context of what we're trying to do. We are looking to refine these two goals, the reliable water supply and the fiscal responsibility. And the key questions are, have we framed up these goals correctly to guide the organization for the next 5 years? And do the objectives capture the important interests of you, the staff, and the community to guide the district's activities for the next 5 years or so? I keep showing you this graphic of the structure of the strategic plan. I wanted to add, though, based on the conversation last time, I wanted to mention also that the strategic plan will have a section on performance measurement. I know that's highly important to all of you to measure, what progress are you making over the next 5 years? How do you know if you're on track or not? So there will be that section in the document. They haven't developed it yet. So your comments on thoughts and discussion you had last time, and I expect you'll have tonight on measurable objectives or how to measure progress and so forth is valuable, and it will be incorporated into the plan. Showed you this last time. This is our current draft of the vision and mission. I believe you have that in front of you to keep an eye on that as we talk about the goals and objectives tonight. So we'll get right into the goals. As you know, we have 5 goals that we're talking about incorporating into the strategic plan. We talked last time about the watershed stewardship goal, goal 3, and tonight we're talking about goal 1, reliable water supply, and goal 4, fiscal responsibility. So a lot of meaty discussion about the goals. And then just a reminder of where this fits going forward. We have these 2 goals tonight. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with the resilient water system goal. And then January 9th, the organizational excellence goal. And then the end of January, coming back to you with the goals, the vision, mission, values, performance measures, all packaged together into a draft strategic plan for your review and discussion. And then all of that leads into the board retreat in March, where you'll be talking about the annual work plan that would be the activities in the next year to advance the goals and objectives in the strategic plan. So it's a planned nesting of detail from the high level mission and vision to goals, objectives, and action plans. So that's how it's all going to fit together, and a chance to review each step of the way. So I will pass it over to Paul talk about water supply reliability.
Paul, before you start,
Oh.
could you say a little bit about the difference between reliability and resilience? Because I suspect that some of the things that stood out for me when I looked at the objectives for reliability or maybe things you're also thinking about for resilience. So how do we differentiate those two?
That's a really interesting question. So our goal really as a water agency, I think, is about having a reliable water supply, right? That's whatever we do, we come out the end of it, we have a water supply that we can rely upon, our customers can rely upon. And that means through any future conditions, right? So a reliable water supply. The projects that we're doing, right, what threatens our water supply in this case is climatic or hydrologic uncertainties or changes or disturbances to hydrology. So our projects that we build and construct, conveyance, and are potentially local storage or, brackish desal or recycled water, those are our resiliency components. That's what allows us to be resilient through the next drought. Now, we focus a lot on drought because that's what we've just come through, but you'll hear probably in other goal sections around infrastructure risk and how we're going to be thinking about hardening that to different types of risks. So drought is one component. And so that's how I think about the difference between reliability and resiliency. They're often used interchangeably. And really our goal is reliability in the end. I don't know if that helps.
Resiliency supports reliability, possibly. I don't want to make a big fuss over this. Just wanted to get your thoughts.
It does get a little bit academic in our discussions, so it would be kind of another interesting conversation over a beer almost, but I guess I'll leave it there.
Reminds me of I took the Trans-Siberian Railroad across the Soviet Union in 1987, and this one guy said druzhba, and I was like stota druzhba. Stota means, what does that mean? And druzhba means friendship. And so he went on a long dialogue about friendship is coming together. I just was wondering what the word meant. I think reliability. We're good. Digress.
But I spent a fair bit of time looking at those two words and kind of anticipating the question. There isn't a really clear-cut, super clean answer for it. So reliable water supply, that's really our goal. And more specifically, tonight we're talking about providing a high quality, reliable, and in this case I threw in and resilient water supply for now and for the future. So our responsibility, and I think we all know this and understand it, as a water agency in Marin, is to provide water for our customers when they need it. It's pretty simple. In 2021, with the severe drought that we were facing, we did almost run out of water. It felt we were within months. Certainly, if the drought had continued by the second half of 2022. And that picture is of Nicasio Reservoir, which is 22,000 acre feet. And what we're seeing here is maybe 3,000 or 4,000 acre feet left in that reservoir. So this goal is really about our commitment to our customers to make sure that we continue to be able to provide them with high quality water that they can rely on, and to develop additional water resources so that we can continue to provide that water through the next drought period that we're sure to face. So we have 4 objectives tonight, and by no means limited. So interested to understand if you have others that you would like to see up here. But with these, we thought were important. And kicking off with reducing potable water use. It's pretty simple, straight to the point. It's our goal, or in this case, objective. Secondly, augmenting our water supply And the third objective here kind of reflects that you never really want to make a situation worse when you're trying to make it better. So we want to preserve and enhance our existing water supply, and we'll see what we mean about that in a couple of slides. And finally, of course, our commitment to our customers is to provide high quality water. And we want that for sure to continue over the next 5 years. So objective one, so this objective really is our water efficiency commitment. And so over the next 5 years, we're committing to an 800 acre-foot reduction in demand. And it's going to help us conserve our precious resources that we have and ensure that we're able to stay on track and meet those state goals for indoor water use. And if you remember, the state goals is sort of an equation with a few different parameters, and the other one of those is water loss. And we'll be bringing back a water loss plan for you to consider probably in January or so. So as we go through, these are sort of our actions to achieve this objective. And the first one is to implement, to identify and implement the Water Efficiency Master Plan. And that's going to provide us concept strategies to help us get to that 800 acre feet. In addition to simply the master plan, we need to get creative with our incentives. We have a very strong conservation plan, and you've heard it over the years from a number of different consultants that have come in. Just the fact that we've been operating a water conservation, I think our first master plan was in 1989 or something like that. So we've been doing this a fairly long time. So we do need to get creative about our incentives, education, outreach to our customers to make sure that those programs do effectively reduce water use. And we talked a minute ago about meeting our water loss requirements from a statewide perspective, a regulatory perspective, but we'd like to take it as far as we can. We want to improve upon whatever we can. And so our action here is to optimize and implement a water loss control program and leak detection program using current industry practices and leveraging innovative technologies. And those technologies are everything from acoustic sensors on hydrants out in the system, listening for leaks, to satellite technologies, to even, little pigs that go in pipelines and flow through and are recovered, and they collect data on the pipeline. So there's a lot of things out there. I'm not saying that they all are going to apply and save us water, but we'd like to understand them. And participating and, and supporting the development of regulations and legislation that drive water efficiency. So, thinking about groups like the NRDC, the Pacific Institute, and trying to stay in touch with those groups and understanding what they're going to be doing and how we can utilize that to help us drive our water efficiencies. And then finally here, looking for opportunities and partnerships for new technologies, or even just theories on water use. It's not going to be an easy goal for us to achieve. So we want to make sure that we uncover every opportunity. So that's it for objective number one. If you guys would like to weigh in on each objective or just keep going.
Why don't we weigh in on each objective, because it could get kind of far away if we keep going. Are there any comments from the board? Okay, so far.
Just one question. The 800 acre feet in 5 year, that's in line with the couple of thousand that were acre feet in savings that we're looking at by 2045, I think.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, I'm fully in line with this being a primary objective. I'm super happy that it's our number one objective, that this is the easiest, best thing that we can do to help increase water supply and reliability for our community. So it seems like we're doing well. Seems like we haven't had a big rebound coming out of the drought with these rains. And so if we can keep this up, that's the best thing that we can do for this objective. So I'm glad you have it up there. I'm glad that it's measurable and that we can look back on it in 5 years and see how we did. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And just to note, that's an important concept about rebound. It's, we're committing to save 800 acre feet. And if we're able to keep our rebound down, it'll be interesting how we end up trying to measure that 800 acre feet. So it'll be some interesting discussions ahead on that. Okay, so, I missed one last item, excuse me, which was a review that we're going to bring for you on a range of policy items that would help further advance water efficiencies. Yes, that's what happens when you try to cram so much into one slide. So objective number 2, and this is a big one, this is augmenting our existing water supply. Our commitment here is to fully implement the strategic plan, the roadmap, if you like, and make progress. So all of the short-term items would be completed within the 5-year strategic plan and make significant progress on those longer-term projects. And then as we think about water supply, it's fine to talk about completing projects and making progress, but what do we really mean? What's our level of service that we're trying to achieve in terms of this objective? And you'll see here one way that we've expressed this, and this was straight out of the strategic water supply assessment goals on water supply, is that we're committing to meet demand during the next 4-year drought with no more than 25% mandatory conservation. And that's straight out of our water shortage contingency plan. Okay, so the actions that we're going to take, I mentioned fully implementing the short-term actions. That includes completing the electrification of Sulahuli Pump Station. And you'll see the per acre feet numbers there that were, again, out of the strategic water supply assessment, and completing the Phoenix to Bontempi pumping, completing the optimization of the Sonoma water supply. So that's bringing in water from Sonoma, and then completing the stream release automation. And we're not committing to an amount on that, but we'll certainly be able to fill that blank in as time goes on. The second component is the long-term projects, specifically called out here, although we talk about the entire roadmap, the long-term projects here referring to the conveyance of winter water from the Russian River to a Marin Reservoir, and of course, looking at local storage. And specifically with those 2 projects, the process that we're engaged in right now is the sort of documentation, and by around May of next year, we'll be at a spot where the board will be able to select a preferred alternative for both of these options and to move those forward. And I'm sure you realize that there's quite a range of potential achievements in the next 5 years for these 2 projects, from everything from still working on rights of way for some of them to, almost ready to bid. So we at this stage, with what we know, we can't really commit to much more than just making significant progress and taking the next steps. So that's objective 2.
We have a schedule for these things. So it's more than just making progress. We actually have some time-bound aspect to these.
So the time-bound specifics that we have go through about next May. So this is being a 5-year plan. I'm sort of looking at where we would be in year 5, and it's very difficult at this early stage to say how far down the line we're going to be specifically. So I wouldn't be able to say that we're going to be completing design, because first we've got to complete CEQA, and there's some unknowns in that process at this point. So, and CEQA for these types of projects can be quite lengthy.
You bet. I'm mostly looking at the upper,
the
first objective, or the first bullet.
Yeah. So fully implementing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do have timelines for those. Yeah.
But I think we approved a longer term outlook with the goal to try to get, if I remember right, 10 to 12,000 acre feet by 2030. We have other long-term hopes. So then I'm hoping in this 5-year plan, we may not have a CEQA approved or even a 30%, but we should have some pretty good visibility how to extend our current water supply beyond, whether it's 2 years or 3 years. But extend it beyond. And I think we were very, very clear about the level of increase that we're shooting for, whether it's through conservation and efficiency or through augmented supply or storage. And I'd like to see in the next 5 years that we have a plan to go achieve that. And I don't think that's hard to ask for. And so call it 10 to 12,000 acre feet over a period of time through conservation efficiency, storage, supply. Let's go for that. Let's do the best that we can and let's put it out there and not say we don't really know through beyond May. We really, this is the time where we can step up.
Can I just jump in there? Because I think my first reaction is the same thing. You know, I see next steps and it's such a vague term, but I also understand that a number of things could go sideways in this process. And I say sideways, just things that are unanticipated, what we're looking at here. So I definitely wouldn't want to lock into something. However, it doesn't change the same goal to say we want to be here. And the hope is next steps are going to help us get there. And we'll like to get as many of those steps taken care of before we go. I think is where I'm going with them.
Okay, so I'm hearing maybe some adjustments of those descriptions here.
I think that to Jed's point, the intention is to get to a certain amount of water. We're that's the intention, but we have a plan. We're just not sure how that plan is going to look as we materialize. And the hope is to get there and to be working towards that goal at the end of the period, I think would be good. Understanding that we're not sure if we're going to be able to do it based on some stuff that's out of our control.
So I'm seeing the second full bullet, achieve significant progress. Maybe that's where we can provide some clarification and talk about numbers, progress to obtain the target number of water supply by 2030 through selection of this, and something that just, I think, anchors this with the policy direction on the roadmap with a little more clarity. Is that?
I think for me that is ideal because, this document is so much stronger when it's reinforced by stuff that we've already invested in and plans we've invested in, and to constantly keep those connections, I think makes sense, especially when we've been putting a lot of work into there. This good, just tie it to the overall goal of acre feet. I think that's good for me.
I think the takeaway is time is of the essence, and we're all very eager to keep watching the clock to make sure we're making the progress that we committed to. And if we're getting off track for reasons that are outside of our control, we learn about them as early on as possible so that we can do what we can to stay on target. I think also Jed is highlighting the fact that in addition to unexpected obstacles, I think that there could also be unexpected opportunities, and we want to keep an eye out for those as well and not miss those, and see that those are things that we're going to keep an eye out for as well. So the future will be adaptively managed for both challenges and opportunities.
Oh, where do you place other activities such as exploration of desal possibilities, recycling, and reuse? Do those fall under the goal of resilience then? Is that what you were trying to clarify earlier?
No. I mean, I was thinking about that earlier this evening. I mean, I think that there maybe refinements that we can make to this objective that would include the steps that we're taking and plan to take on desalination. Petaluma Brackish, for example, we have some work going on there. It's not necessarily reflected in this augmenting the existing supply. And I had sort of left that in just loosely with the roadmap items. Similarly, recycled water, which I think we could place, if you wanted to see it explicitly as an objective, maybe in objective number 1, reducing potable use. And you'd have, recycled water, and you could reflect our overall strategy there, which is seeking, funding private public to help offset costs of
well, we'll take a look at it. We could also add just a third bullet here that reflects, continue to pursue brackish desal and monitor, desal projects going forward and technology advances, and that kind of our message to the board and public on what we're doing with desal. Probably in that bullet could capture similarly what we're doing with recycling, pursuing grants and that sort of stuff, to really not have the question when someone looks at this, where's recycling and desal? And I think that's really the spirit of the comments.
Yeah, again, Paul, you know, I know nobody wants to hear about reliability versus resilience, but we do have a goal around resilience. And if you think exploration of the the longer shots, the more far-reaching activities, the ones that are going to require a lot of technical innovation before they're really appropriate for us, if those fall into the category of resilience, you know, and not necessarily the immediate actions that constitute reliability, you know, I don't know. That's you know, something to think about.
Well, I think this is really important. So maybe one way to go about it is, as we've talked about a lot here, is to think about our water supply and resilience and reliability, about our short, medium, and long-term opportunities. In the short term, you're really clear. In the medium term, which I think this is a 5-year strategic plan, you're going to be able to be not as clear as in the short term, but not as far reaching. But we have some goals, and let's set the goals and make progress. And my suggestion is that 10 to 12,000 acre feet, to have a plan within 5 years to get there, would really sit well. Now, it may not happen. There's tons of obstacles, and we may not be able to do it, but let's try. Long term, there's lots of things that we should be moving forward with. We should be making progress on looking at desal. We should make progress on looking at recycling opportunities. We should make progress on further water efficiency and conservation methods that we can reduce the demand. So there's a lot that we can do in all of these steps, but maybe thinking about it short, medium, and long term will give you a way to set this in a strategic plan that can help us have guidance going forward.
Can I just follow up real quickly on the recycled piece or the desal piece? So for me, if it's resilient, it's more appropriate there. Great. If it's for reliability, that's fine too. Either way is good. But I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of technological advances. We're going to see a lot of legislation change. We're going to see a lot of things really accelerate in both of those fields. It might not be applicable for us, or might not be the best bet for us, but it would behoove us to continue to monitor that. So memorializing it in this plan for me is important to have. We'll continue to at least monitor regulation, monitor technology, and determine applicability into our system. Something along those lines.
Okay, good comments. Thank you.
I think that I'll just add in there that some of the last bullets in the previous objective, if you weren't applying them to water efficiency and to water supply innovation, they'd be very similar bullets in terms of looking for partnerships, watching what's happening, being part of testing of technologies and other such things. I just think they're obviously connected.
Okay, thank you. Okay, objective 3, preserve and enhance our existing water supply. So this goal, the district is committing to strive to ensure continued access to supplemental water from Sonoma, which can account for 25% of our annual potable demand. Our actions here then would be to renew the agreement with Sonoma Water to ensure continued access to that supplemental water supply. And then to enhance our relationship with Sonoma Water and the other contractors, recognizing that we're engaged in this exercise around water supply reliability and resilience, to help us to develop regional support for water supply projects. And then thirdly, support the process for the development of a new eel Russian facility, recognizing the importance of that water transfer to Lake Mendocino and the upper Russian River, and how it could potentially affect our own water supply through Sonoma Water. I think that's the end for that one. Yeah.
Board comments?
I'll jump in then. I wonder if here the regional approach to strengthening our water supply deserves more a greater highlight under this item. I mean, it's sort of a unique opportunity that we have to build on these relationships, something many other regions may not have to the same degree. And I'm not sure that our constituents or ratepayers really appreciate. I certainly didn't over a year ago, the potential in those regional partnerships. So I wonder if even the last bullet point speaks to this, but it's so specific around the Eel Russian facility, which may happen, which may not happen. I wonder if we should broaden that out to or add on to, a commitment, to following up on all the regional opportunities that were just spoken about.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think the third bullet is probably a little more specific than we want it to be. We don't know where it's going to come out. It's a moving target at this point, but we can, I mean, maybe small, but I look into supporting our regional partners to facilitating these kinds of relationships. I just wouldn't necessarily say we're ready to say yes when we don't know what we're saying yes to. But overall, we've already as a board approved, looking at it. I just would tone that down a little bit. The contract with Sonoma that's coming up in 18 months is critical. It's critical for all of us to understand the pluses and minuses of that. I think it's been 10 years since the last one, or is it right? And so these come up. And I think this will be a confluence of intellectual events that come together that gives us the opportunity to be super thoughtful. I don't know that I would necessarily say just renew, but maybe renew and enhance. But I think there's a lot we can do here, and that thought process and strategy will come together, I think, as we do our feasibility studies and understanding of what we want and what we can do. So I'm glad this is at the top of the list. And I appreciate your highlighting the Sonoma Water and their contractors. It probably goes beyond that, both federal and state, as well as our local region. So I'd probably suggest you add some broader relationships, and we're not just looking myopically at our own rain take in our own reservoirs. So I think you're pretty close to exactly where I want to be here.
Larry? I think
Sorry, just Jed said something that, contractors, Paul, is something that we don't, I barely understand, and our constituents won't understand at all. I think we need another word for it.
It's really a good point. Maybe we start calling them Sonoma retailers or something.
Customers or, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll come up with something. It is a good point. It's one of these things we're so used to saying, no one knows. They think a contractor is someone we're hiring. So what we can.
I think my only point that I'll add here is I wonder if there's a fourth bullet that recognizes preserving and enhancing existing water supplies from the other 75% that comes from our own watershed. I know we're covering that elsewhere, and so it's it crosswalks with other objectives or and other goals, but it seems to me that something is missing for the other 75% that we get from our beautiful watershed.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good point. I do think our initiatives are largely captured elsewhere. I wonder if the title should be more focused on regional partnering, regional approaches to clarify. That's really, because it does feel like where we are today, that's a key strategic issue that we probably do want as a dedicated focus and an objective. And maybe there's a way to refine that if that makes sense to you.
It gets, but then it sort of becomes another bullet of objective 2, augment existing water supply. So I don't mean to muddy the waters, no pun intended, by offering that 4th bullet, but if we are talking about preserving and enhancing our existing water supply, which some of these bullets are that, and some of them are actually kind of a little bit more about augmenting our existing supply. It's a little bit of a mix. So maybe it is worth coming back at these and trying to find a way to more cleanly separate them. I think that in general, the bullets are things that folks have commented on, and how they're binned in objectives. Maybe there's a cleaner way to do that. Any other board comments? Okay, keep going.
Okay. Objective 4 then. So our commitment here is to high quality water for our customers. So the district will manage our water system to ensure water quality is protected from the source to our customers. And for this, our actions are to develop reservoir management plans for Alpine, Bontempi, Kent, all of our reservoirs. Currently don't have any reservoir management plans for those. Those plans would allow us to establish water quality objectives and really firmly come up with plans for algae management strategies. Further, we commit to reviewing and researching water treatment options for removal of taste and odors in drinking water in particular, as well as other improvements to water quality. We want to ensure that our water quality lab, which is monitors and provides the analysis for to show that our water meets all the state and federal standards, is properly accredited to the latest TNI ELAP accreditation standard for compliance. And we would like to continue to participate in the development of regulations that are appropriately protective of public health and the environment. And we do that through participation with industry groups and associations.
Board comments.
No additional comments. Just want to say thank you for putting this together tonight. I think it captures almost everything, and the comments filled in the blanks from there. So thank you.
My thanks as well, Paul. What is TNI?
It's a very, the National Institute is what TNI stands for. It's an accreditation standard that's largely for commercial labs, and the state of California decided to adopt it. It's sort of like think of it as an ISO, 14,000 or 9,000 type certification process.
Yeah, I think in number 2, we should be a little bolder in what we're talking about there. Jerry Gilbert and I have been talking about this a long time. Stafford Lake has ozone at the end of it. I think we should be thinking about that as an option for our treatment plants. If you put ozone in, you can forget about taste and odor issues. Additionally, it makes the water sparkle, which is a hard one to put your fingers on, but that's what happens to it. It really improves the appearance of the water. And I think that it's time perhaps for us to step up to the modern world and get beyond our 1960s Kennedy Jenks water treatment plants. So might want to think about that, of putting in at least a good, as opposed to research. I don't think there's much research needed here. It's just a matter of getting the gumption to do it.
I'll just add that I think I'd like to see the word affordability put in here in the objective and throughout, that it's not just about high quality, but we need to make this affordable for everybody in our community. And having that be paramount across all would be something I'd like you to revisit.
Cost effective.
That might be better. Just think about the financial impact of all these decisions and trying to do it as well and thoughtful as we possibly can. It's not just about having the highest quality. We want to have super high quality, but we have to make this affordable for our people.
Yep.
in addition to that good point, I'm going to do what I did on the last one here, which is when I think about what is a biggest threat to the quality of our water, it's the health of our watershed, and particularly the impact that wildfire could have on our water supply. And I know we've got other places where we talk about wildfire management. I don't think it's a bad thing to let people know by crosswalking bullets like that, that that's an important piece of why we do this, and that our objective about providing high quality water is tied to our fire objectives. Any other board comments? Onward.
Good evening, President Schmidt and board members. My name is Brett Uppendahl. I'm the finance director, and I'm going to go over goal number 4 here, which is fiscal responsibility. And so as the kind of subtitle there shows, what we mean when we talk about fiscal responsibility is to judiciously manage our customers' revenue and other financial resources for operating, maintaining, and upgrading the water system, not only just for today, but also in preparation for the future. And so when we kind of break that down a little bit more, we're talking about this goal kind of, from a 10,000 foot level. As a public agency, we talked about this a lot in the rate setting process, but as a public agency, all the revenues we receive here are reinvested into the water system. So whatever we pull in, we do invest. We don't need to make sure we're investing wisely. And customer water rates are the primary source. They're over 95% of the revenues we bring in. So we really are focused on managing ratepayer revenues, as we'll talk about in the following objectives, as well as finding ways to maximize any other funding we can, so we're not so solely sourced on our own district ratepayers here. Within our ratepayer base, we also know that we're relatively small when we consider ourselves compared to other agencies, and we're relatively stable, meaning we don't have a lot of growth over time. So whereas other agencies can have more economies of scale, or they can kind of have growth plans that help offset the costs, we really are kind of given a relatively fixed ratepayer base. So given that, it's especially imperative for us to prioritize our financial stability over the long term and cost-effective operations in order to maximize the value of our local ratepayer funds. And so within that, we have 5 objectives that we're proposing to include here in this plan. As you can see on the screen: financial stability, fair and proportional rates, cost-effective business processes, with the ultimate goal of having, as much as we can, reduced financial impacts to our ratepayers. And then throughout our operations, we want to have financial transparency. And so I'll go through the actions of each of these objectives here. Within the first objective of financial stability, what we really want to do here is we want to utilize our reserves and invest in infrastructure in a consistent and predictable manner to minimize the rate impact on customers when unforeseen events occur. And so there's a lot in that statement, but basically, given a steady ratepayer base that we talked about, we need to make sure we're really trying to do as best we can to make our revenues predictable and stable, not only for us to operate it, but also on our customers. So we don't have big changes from year to year in the cost of water. And so as it's implied here in the objective here, utilizing reserves and making investments wisely are 2 of the biggest pieces of that. And so we kind of break this down a little bit more into the actions over the next 5 years. The first bullet point we have here is to establish stabilization reserves to mitigate annual revenue fluctuations. And the board may recall that we did a lot of this work in the reserve policy that we took on over the fall. And so this is really kind of the end of that work of setting the policy and the beginning of actually doing it, right? So each year as we close the books and as we plan for the budgets in future years is really trying to use those stabilization reserves and maybe even enhance them to kind of further mitigate or insulate the ratepayer base from any annual fluctuations to the best we can. The second action point under here is to support the development of a long-term capital improvement program that ensures an appropriate and stable level of investment. And then this kind of brings me to a little bit of a sidebar, but I think the board's already realized this in the sense of the cross-pollination or the kind of cross-linkage between goal sets. And this begins to kind of talk about the finance operations in general. That, we don't do this specifically in the finance office, but we work closely with the capital team and the engineering team to make sure that we're, supporting, their overall, operational development and their investment plan, and making sure that on the finances it's solid on the backside. So we work closely with Alex and his team, and the board will hear more about that in the next upcoming, I believe it's December 19th, in the next strategic planning session, specifically on long-term capital investments. And then the final bullet point here is to regularly update our fees, our rents, and our other non-rate revenues to maintain pace with inflation. And I know they just mentioned that our rate payer base is about 95% of our revenues. And so we're only talking about 5% of the annual revenue base, but it's still very important. You want to make sure we're not losing ground with respect to inflationary changes. We want to, again, minimize any large swings if we do have to catch up after a couple of years of not raising the small fees and the small revenues we do bring in here. And we're always looking for ways to maximize our non-rate revenue, because it gives the board and the district ultimate flexibility in how to spend those funds, as opposed to ratepayer funds, which are more governed by Prop 218. So in any case here, we want to make sure we're always looking at all of our revenue sources and regularly updating them over time. I'll stop here. These are the 3 actions on financial stability, and I'll stop here to take any comments if the board has any.
Board comments?
Just one quick clarification, and we might get it at the next board meeting, with the long-term capital improvement program investments. Would that be assumed to include the water supply projects, the big ones that we're moving forward to? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Brett, I mean, you may, given the dramatic shift in our financials and revenue and dues, I think it would be thoughtful for us to have periodic reviews of how we're doing, what we may have predicted that was different, and give ourselves the ability to adjust appropriately so that we are spending within our means and saving to what we said we were going to do. So some sort of measurability, I think, would be really, really important, and level, which we do normally, but I'd put that as a top objective, and given the dramatic shift that we just went through.
Maybe that's a good point, which is as a matter of process. I mean, that is what we do on a regular basis, is checking on our financials, and maybe that's worthy of a bullet point that just acknowledges regular and frequent assessment of our financials, so that we are, again, maintaining stability and proper management.
And just as an aside to that, there's a couple bullets in the forthcoming slides that start to touch on that. And I would just say, in general, I mean, I think this district does have a long history of, thoughtful and prudent financial management. And so you'll find a lot of these themes I'm talking about either in our fiscal policies or in our general budget practices or rate practices. But I do also understand this is where we want to highlight them and pull them out. So the feedback is good feedback. Thank you. Okay, so with respect to rates, we have a whole objective here on our rate process. And so legally and, the way we would like to do business here, we want to make our rates fair and proportional. So under the legal framework of Prop 218, we will continuously evaluate the effectiveness of the rate structure to ensure it produces sufficient revenue for what the district needs, and also maintaining that balance of affordability and proportionality. And so again, I know that those are part of that's legalese, because it is what we have to do under 218, but part of it really does guide the way we take a look at our rate structure periodically. I think typically at the most we'll go every 4 years, but we can take a look in shorter bites if we need to. More specific actions in this 5-year plan under this header would be to conduct a connection fee study to fully capture the costs of our current and future infrastructure needs. And this isn't exactly Prop 218, but it is still a big piece of our financial planning process. And so we are, as part of our current work plan, we're beginning the process there on the connection fee study to evaluate the current fee structure, and then also to recommend any changes going forward, again, to really fully maximize, how we're, spreading the costs of our current system, water system, as well as any future infrastructure needs that we do plan for. The second action here over the next 5 years will be to develop new customer outreach efforts to make sure that we're connecting qualifying customers to the district's low-income discount program. We've talked many times about how we do have a good uptake of our discount program. However, I think we do want to make sure that as our customer base turns over and as things change, we want to make sure that we're getting the right customers and make sure that those who need the help can get it. And so that really is a big partnership here between my team and admin services and also with Adrian's team, just to make sure that everyone's aware of it and that as situations change for all of us, that they know that there is that a program there available to help. As we go into the next formal rate setting process, which will be 2027, we want to make sure we're again conducting a cost of service study to not only review the last cycle, but also to project the next cycle to ensure that our charges are proportional and reflective of any demand trends that we're seeing at the time. Obviously, this is 2 to 3 years out, so we don't know where we'll be then, but this will be the time when we'll take a deep dive to make sure that we're headed in the right direction and that the structure we have is as fair and proportional as possible. Then the final action here over the next 5 years will be to implement a robust outreach plan throughout that 2027 rate setting process to make sure our customers are informed about any proposed changes. And I think we did a good job with this last year. I think there's always ways to improve. And, in 3 or 4 years, there'll be, new people here in the district, and we'll also have, new ways of communicating. So again, this will be a big effort from my team and Adrian's team, but we will definitely make sure we're prioritizing it and including it as part of the 2027 process. So I'll pause here as this is the last action under objective 2.
Board comments.
Brett, the connection fee study feels to me like this was already mapped out a while ago. I'm a little surprised to see it in our 5-year strategic plan.
It was something we identified we had to do, in the last annual goal setting process. And so just the way the timing comes on here, it'll be within that first year of the 5-year cycle. So we'll be bringing that to you within the first couple months of this being finalized.
Got it. I think, but more importantly, I would like to see something that reflects our intent to monitor the impacts of the 2023 rate setting process on revenues and customer bills, just to understand how good our cost of service analysis actually was in modeling financial impacts on customers and revenues for the district. So something that articulates that we'll be evaluating this on a regular basis and potentially, we don't have to say respond to anything that seems out of line, but that would be the implication.
I think you need another bullet point to address affordability and equity as a goal for fair and proportional rates.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think that while we have a low income discount program, which is, I think, is of course very important, and I think it's I gather that it's a very strong program. I think that we ought to be looking to see whether there's other things that we can do to address affordability, and recognize that this is another one of those places where innovation can occur in strategies, and we ought to be. I'd like us to be a leader in that as well, because affordability is a really important issue in Marin, and I'd like to make sure that we have something to point to that we're proud of, and we already do. But I think adding a specific bullet to it, as Larry suggested, is a good one.
Triple down on that. As I was reading that, I think we should go beyond customer outreach for qualifying folks and give ourselves some real targets. Let's double the number of people who have access to this program. Let's think about how we can not just rest on being one of the best in the Bay Area, but really best of class nationally, and how we think about providing affordable water to the folks who need it the most. So I'd step it up. We shouldn't rest on the fact that we're really, really good at it. Let's do better, and maybe put some targets on it. Maybe double doesn't sound like a lot, because I know a lot more people could take advantage of this that are not, and so go for a reach here, please.
Yeah, no, and I fully understand where the board's coming from, and I think, you know, what resonated to me the most is just making sure that those who need it the most get it, right? And so I think the effectiveness of the program is something I've been wanting to address. I just would kind of make the comment to the board that we're somewhat limited in the total amount because it's our non-rate revenue that funds this, and so there is a, you know, some sort of a cap there. But I think we want to get as close to that cap as we can, is what I'm hearing from the board.
It would be really great to have if there was some way to assess how effective it is, how many people would qualify, and how many of those people are requesting to be part of the program. Would just give us a sense of how many unserved people are out there still that we could be reaching out to, and that might give us a sense of also how to reach those people more effectively. And I take your comment correctly, or not correctly, but obviously understand that we have a limitation of what we can do under Prop 218. So, but we can do the most that we can.
Just to clarify one point though, so we can't use rate revenues to support the discount programs, but presumably we can raise other sources of revenue if we felt like those were desperately needed to reach it. So having the data on how many are using it versus how many qualify may actually give us the justification for trying to raise the amount of revenue that the resources, the funds we have to support the program.
But understand, those are mostly contractual relationships. We can't just go, oh, hey, the lease is doubling on this, or the rent at 100 Larkspur is doubling. Opportunities come for that, and we were able to do it the last time at 100 Larkspur, double the rent, but they don't come very often. So, you know, I think you should think about Brett's point of equitable increase with inflation. That's cool, but you're not going to see step changes in those numbers, I don't think.
Is it, sorry, Larry, go ahead.
Well, the only other thing I was going to say is Ben and I had a conversation today a little bit about this, and I'm getting feedback from constituents that we have reached a point with our rates that people who were non-sensitive to the cost are now sensitive to the cost. The impact being, we may have put ourselves in a box where the water costs so much that people stop using it. So we then limit our revenue, gross revenue, by that loop. So I don't know if we're there, but we're much closer to it now than we were before. And, you know, I'm used to living in the peninsula where those kind of costs usually aren't even discussed in people's conversation. They are now. So it may just be knee jerk. I don't know, but something to keep in mind. We may have, like I said, built a box that it may not be quite so simple to get out of in terms of actually improving the cash flow.
So I'll move on to objective 3 here now. And this is cost-effective business processes. And so the idea here is the district will implement operational practices to increase their efficiencies and to make sure we're maximizing the value of our ratepayer revenues. We'll go through the actions here. Number one action, which again is one thing that we're beginning to move on already, is to update our enterprise resource planning system, which right now is SAP, to streamline routine processes and to provide improved data analytics. And so this is something we've reviewed with the board a few times, and just to kind of remind the board, you know, we're using software that's over 20 years old, it's reaching end of life, and we're really not getting the most out of it, nor are we kind of on any kind of a modern system that we could be getting the most out of. So staff's looking forward to being able to, you know, take on this project and really kind of open up the warehouses of data that we do have and be able to inform, not only, you know, more effectively and efficiently inform, but can maybe glean more data out of it as we go forward. We're excited for the opportunity to see what's out there. Second thing, and this is kind of more, standard, cost cutting and cost effective business practices, but we want to make sure we're evaluating opportunities to improve our business practices along the way. And so that's part of that will get spurred by the SAP upgrade process. We want to utilize new technologies, and those are, popping up all over the place, and also leverage external resources to improve our operational efficiencies. And when I look at it this way, I think of this as kind of a consistent look, through the budget process, through the planning process, as we go through that financial look each year. And especially here at Marin, where we do have a unique sized operation. I mentioned at the beginning, in the sense of like a slow growth ratepayer base. The size of the agency here is kind of that point where there's a lot of decisions of, buy versus lease, use outside partners versus, in-house staff. And so I think we're always looking into those decision factors and, what makes the best sense in the short term or the long term, and how do we really get the best bang for our buck, knowing that we are on, public funds, ratepayer funds, and do we need to make sure we have, effective business processes nonetheless. And so again, this is much more of kind of an ongoing practice that we do through the budget process and through financial planning, and it will, impact all operations, not just finance, but it's something we always need to make sure we're taking a look at to get the best bang for our buck. Bullet 3, again, this is probably, or I know it is, it's in our fiscal policies as well, but we want to make sure we're always keeping an eye on minimizing the cost of future financing by maintaining our high credit score that we do have. And so it goes without saying, but in my world, it's something we just want to make sure we're getting our ratios right, not falling out of line with our debt service coverage, with our overall operating budget and ratios and whatnot. So it's just something we'll continue to keep our eye on, especially as we kind of go back into that debt market here in the next couple of years, just to make sure we're not even close to slipping from our high AA credit rating. And then here's one as well that we can do kind of more internally with the especially with the assistance of our communications team, is to increase the customer use of our online bill payments and any electronic payments through new outreach efforts to make sure we're reducing our banking and printing costs. And this is obviously something that probably we've been doing for 10 or 15 years. We've reached a little bit of a saturation point where we know, about how many customers are taking advantage of electronic versus, paper systems. We're also seeing paper systems, get more and more expensive every year. And so we know there's costs that could be saved there if we can just explain to customers the benefits of being more online and electronic, like we do, many of us do in our other parts of our life. But we just need to make sure our customers are aware that these are available to them, and we need to make sure that we're doing the best we can to minimize the costs of basic things like printing and postage and whatnot. And then finally, we touched on this a little bit in the affordability discussion, but we want to make sure we're streamlining the application process for discount programs and leak adjustments, as those are one of our major touch points with our customers. Not only will it be better customer service for them, but it'll also, reduce the amount of staff time that we're taking on kind of these repetitive and kind of annual tasks, and being able to direct our staff to more kind of higher level and higher return on investment activities rather than just kind of the same old process each year. So we're going to look into how we streamline those processes. And that is my last action point on objective 3. So happy to take any comments.
Board comments on objective 3?
Well, I'm extremely happy to see number 4, because I've been crafting those words while you were talking, in case you didn't have it on there. I think it's time to move forward significantly in that area. 90% of the people. I was thinking today, I saw a postage thing come through with a meter and 63 cents. And obviously that's going to be $1 pretty soon. I was thinking about it too, that I think we currently spend about 1% of our budget on bills, something like that, maybe more. I'm talking about the hard copy and the postage. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it costs to make the bill.
Just rough numbers, just to kind of round that out. I think we spend a little under $1 per item that goes out between postage and the actual print costs. And I think we're around 300,000 a year, so less than 1% of our budget, but it's still a big number that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. And the other question I had is, does it help us on the credit rating to get the DCR higher than it is now?
So, I don't know that you get extra credit for being much higher than it is now. I think it's to the point you're making. I think they look at the balance of, can you make your payments, which is what DCR, debt coverage ratio, does for you. Can you make your payments? if things get tight, which that's what helps kind of prove that you can. And then they really do look at the management kind of structure and financial planning. And so I think if there's a story behind the DCR and why it's up because it's part of a plan, then yes. I think if you're just arbitrarily raising it, I think it almost raises more risks probably in their mind. So it really depends on the rest of the story, how it gets weaved into it.
Because I can remember times when it was 2.5 or 3, I think maybe even 4 sometimes, as opposed to the contractual minimum.
Yeah.
I think you're right. That's my impression also. It seems to kind of just do what it does. Clearly, it's better to be higher than lower, but as long as you're above and you're consistent.
You could say best in class. Look at us compared to other agencies.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's one of those things where we have the highest possible pretty much credit rating now. We're at a nice DCR. So it's like I said, I don't get extra credit. I think we're about maxed out there. It's just a matter of is that sustainable over time? Does it follow an investment plan? And yeah, how do we relate to other agencies that maybe go in for the bond offering at that time?
Does bring something up though that we've talked about, but which is the potential for higher interest rates on our funds. I know David Behar was into that heavily, and as was Larry Bragman, about things like Fannie Mae as potential. You've heard me before, and I'm not going to go into it again too much, but Lehman Brothers burned us hard, and they were considered to be the gold standard in their end of the stick. So maybe we should give a little more look to that, because it's basically free money, and that is something, Ranjiv, you could do. That can give you a step change in income.
Increased interest.
Yeah, because they basically follow, I don't know, more or less the prime rate. Kind of, if they're getting the prime rate, they're doing real good. There are ways to get significantly more than prime rate. I don't know how much more risk there is. Undoubtedly more, but I don't know how much more. So that's something we could do to change that mix.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I think that there's always that balance of risk and return. And I think, we've talked about it a couple of times in prior meetings about, really kind of, in low interest environments, that means one thing, and high interest, it may be another thing. So I think it's something we can take a look at. I don't know if I could commit to putting it in the 5-year plan because the rates can go up or down over the time, but I do see what you're saying about maximizing the return that we have on our current.
Yeah, I don't know that it requires action. It just requires words.
Okay.
To say we're going to at least look at that to maximize it, get the spirit, not necessarily the action.
Okay. Alrighty. So objective 4 here, to have reduced financial impacts on our ratepayers. The district our goal is to seek out alternative revenue sources to lessen the impact of future rate increases on customers. And within this, these are things that I think the board talks about, pretty much every board meeting. Number 1 is to pursue a Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA, funding for large-scale water storage improvement projects. The second one here, we just finished talking about this, utilize bond funding to spread infrastructure funding costs over time. So the idea here is we want to cash fund what we can cash fund, but things that are multi-generational or of the, or would result in a large increase year over year in terms of cash funding. That's when you want to use bond financing to spread the costs over time. And so we want to maintain that balance there. What we can cash fund, we will. What we want to spread over time to minimize rate impacts, we will also use bond funding there. Develop and secure grants from state and federal agencies to increase our capacity to advance key initiatives. And again, this is kind of one of those, if we can get them, they're great. If we can use partnerships, that helps our chance in many ways. And so we want to make sure we're continuing to do that. Any way we can pull in outside funds to reduce our impact on our ratepayers, we're going to pursue those. Obtain Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, otherwise known as WIFIA, loans in this case, to maximize our financial flexibility for projects that may have longer construction cycles. And then finally, we want to leverage our regional partnerships to increase our state and federal funding opportunities. And a lot of that's done through our grant legislative program.
Board comments.
Maybe I have something to say about everything. One word, I love all of it. I would add the word prudently utilize bond funding. I'm just not a giant fan of debt in general in my life and in my businesses and here. So we have the opportunity to do that, especially with the lens of having reduced financial impact on our ratepayers. But we want to be super thoughtful, super careful. We're not going to over leverage this thing, but this is an opportunity to achieve your objective. So one word, prudently, that I made more words than I probably needed to.
Good word, though. I'm just going to offer one comment, which is the title "Reduced Financial Impacts on Ratepayers" could be so many different things. I think what you're really talking about here is I don't want to wordsmith it, but it's securing additional funding sources, or grants or whatever you want to say. But it's additional. It's bringing in additional funds, and I think that's just would be more clear to what the objective is. Because you could reduce financial impacts on ratepayers in other ways, and that we're not capturing here with these bullets.
Okay. I have a question. Do grants, by their nature, come under 218? In other words, aren't they really non-revenue money?
Well, typically they're for a particular purpose when you get the grant, and then we can't really project how much we're going to get in grants. I think we try to anticipate some contribution, but we have to be very, very careful about that. So I think that's how it plays into rate setting, if that's what you're talking about. And it helps to offset.
Think about Ranjiv's question that, if you increase that side, I understand it's not going to be all the time.
Right.
But I'm just thinking about, is there a way to structure that into the process to make more funds available?
Yeah, it's interesting and creative. We can look into it. I think it may be a bit challenging to be too creative. I understand the point of, well, you get $1 million grant that offsets what your rates would pay for it. Does that somehow free up additional non-rate revenue? Feels complicated, but it's interesting. Let us take a look at it.
But we're kind of doing it. So if you look at, the tunnel, Pine Mountain Tunnel,
right?
We were shooting for a grant.
Right.
We have to do it.
Right.
So the grants are an opportunity for us to potentially lessen the burden on our ratepayers.
Absolutely.
Because we have to do these things. So there's many, many capital projects that we're going to invest in. Having grant, so turn it around. It's not like our grants revenue. No, it's the other way around. We have a revenue and expense plan. We have capital numbers in our budget. Maybe we can reduce that expense rather than look at it as increased revenue.
The point, though, was Ranjiv's question. Can we get 218 doesn't allow us to subsidize lower people with higher rates, higher tiers. So when you get into that, if you can break out more, even if it's just a classification, that it's non-rate revenue, you potentially have more money in that pot. I agree with Ben. It's complicated.
Last but not least.
Definitely not least, financial transparency. So the district will maintain transparency in all aspects of our financial operations. And we'll do that in the following ways: by conducting biannual reviews of our fiscal policies, by publishing quarterly financial summaries, by conducting regular internal and external financial audits, and then by proactively communicating to our customers about our successful grant applications, as well as our investments in infrastructure projects, water supply roadmap efforts, and watershed restoration milestones, to make sure that our ratepayers are well aware of how their funds are being spent. And as we talked about earlier, able to track those back to the expenditure plan that we set up with the rates.
How are we doing with the audit for current audit?
The audit for fiscal 23 is being finalized over the next week or so, and we plan to have that back to the board at the next FAC.
Perfect. Okay. I'm cool with that.
Any other board comments?
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Brett, very much.
Did you want me to ask for
Yeah.
public comments?
Yeah, I was just, are we, that was the end of, there was, Charles, you didn't have anything more to say? Okay. Yes, please. Yeah, any, for last, any board comments finally on this? Okay, yeah, are there any public comments?
Yes, there are. Mr. Ed Jameson, Phil Sauter, and Larry Minikis. Hold on, Mr. Jameson, let me unmute you here, sir. Can you hear me?
I appreciated the discussion tonight on augmenting existing water supply, but in addition is needed, stating complete evaluation of desalination possibilities. On the discussion of financial or fiscal responsibility, bond funding needs to be preserved for the large costs we will incur to rectify our supply insufficiency. Also, rolling the dice on longer-term investments for our cash, not even the Wall Street pros can forecast interest rates. There's no way district staff should be speculating on ways to goose interest income by taking term risk with our cash balances. On goal 4, fiscal responsibility, I don't know that this is the right place for it, but somewhere in the plan, an additional objective is needed saying, assure that district programs and ordinances are fiscally responsible based on cost-benefit analyses. After July's large increases in water prices, to be followed by 3 more years of significant increases, it's particularly important for the district to demonstrate fiscal responsibility in the way its programs and ordinances. The mandatory 2016 gray water ordinance is a truly absurd waste of ratepayers' money, and it needs to be rescinded immediately. There's no excuse for further delay. Responsibly spending ratepayers' money has clearly not been a core value for the district in the past. That needs to change. Any program must pass and continue to be evaluated by cost-benefit analyses to assure its reasonableness. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Phil Sauter, please.
Thanks very much for the presentations. The proposed goal for potable demand reduction is 800 acre feet in 5 years. On an annual basis, this is even less than the district's current goal of, I think it's 4,000 acre feet by 2045, although it may have been reduced. Many of us have noted that this 2045 goal is much too far away to have any impact on water supply, and here it is being delayed even further by a very slow start in the first 5 years. I'm hoping I haven't missed a decimal point, but 800 acre feet in 5 years is equivalent to 262 million gallons in 5 years. That's equivalent to a daily average of 144,000 gallons, or less than 1% of our current daily production. In fact, it's only 0.75 gallons per capita per day, or 3 quarts of water. Measuring this small amount and attributing it to actions taken by the district will be difficult. It also doesn't tie to any actions planned by the district to specific use, such as outdoor versus indoor water use. It doesn't tie to specific groups of customers, low water users versus heavy water users. And it doesn't reference the district's plan to increase distribution of non-potable water for outdoor use. I'd suggest delaying setting a numerical goal until staff and the board can agree on a potable water reduction that is more meaningful and one that is measurable and ties into actions that the district plans to take. If we're actually ready to set a 5-year goal of reducing potable water use by less than 1% or 3 quarts a day, it seems we're setting our sights much too low. I'll also suggest adding a specific objective 5 for increasing the use of non-potable recycled water among local clusters of heavy outdoor users. This would allow us not only to save meaningful amounts of potable water, but it would also tie into goal 4 of fiscal responsibility by starting to increase district revenue from recycled water sales. With about half the district's water used outdoors for non-potable purposes, there's no reason we shouldn't begin to see an increasing revenue stream from these sales. This would be especially impactful if we can use tiered pricing for this non-potable use of recycled water. These users tend to be among the district's heaviest users. I know that the goals presented this evening are high-level goals, but I believe that effectively managing water demand to substitute non-potable water for potable water where it's possible and cost-effective, along with developing a meaningful revenue stream from non-potable recycled water, are high-level goals. If the district looks out 5 years and still finds itself using half its potable water outdoors, I think we'd all agree that would be irresponsible and place district customers at risk of not having potable water where it's needed and at a price that all customers can afford to pay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Larry Minikis, please.
Yes, good evening all, and thank you for the presentation. And I was pretty much focusing on the same thing that Director Schmidt was, which was objective 3, preserve and enhance existing water supply, and agree that enhanced regional water supply seems more appropriate for that slide. And then looking at the schedule on December 19th, goal 2 is resilient water system. And we've seen there that what should be discussed is to acknowledge climate change, acknowledge the cone of uncertainty with climate change, and the need to harden our watershed and our reservoir facilities. And I think that's very key to the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Okay, thank you, Terry. All right, with that, we'll move to our next agenda item, which is the 2024 calendar for the Marin Water Board and Committee. Oh, one more?
Sorry, I just saw her hand. Miss Marilyn Price, please. I apologize.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I had raised my hand and then maybe I hadn't. And I hope my comment here is not out of line with the discussion, but just out of curiosity, I'm always very much in favor of the comments I hear from Phil, and but I don't ever hear any response or know where they go, in terms of this potable versus non-potable and what we're going to do in the future. Of course, my concern is all about conservation and what we can do to the maximum to conserve so that we don't have to use these other measures that, again, and I've said this many times, that we can live within our means. But I'm curious how do we hear, because I know you can't reply to us now and you can't reply to me now, but how we hear what, where these comments go. So that's just my curiosity and question.
Thank you. It's a great question, and we do hear them, and we appreciate, I think, Phil, the time and effort you make when you come to the meetings to provide really thoughtful comments. And I think whether we respond or not, we are hearing you, and as we are all the folks who take the time to comment. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. No other speakers? Other comments?
No, not now.
Okay, no worries. It's okay. All right. With that, the 2024 calendar.
Yes. Good evening again. Adrienne Mertens, Communications and Public Affairs Manager, here for item 8B, 2024 calendar of Marin Water Board and Committee meetings. So the calendar for board and committee meetings is adopted annually. Actually, last January, when we were before the board adopting the 2023 schedule, we did get feedback to bring future calendars to the board earlier. And so we're getting this to you over a month in advance of the usual time that we bring it forward. And hopefully this should help with planning your schedules as we go into the new year. Marin Water's board policy does provide guidelines for setting the yearly schedule. However, the board does have discretion to make modifications when adopting the calendar. The proposed 2024 calendar is attached to the agenda packet and the staff report for this item. This meeting schedule was prepared by staff in alignment with the board policy, as well as past board practice. The schedule does take into consideration the director's involvements in regional boards and committees. It also takes into consideration possible participation at annual water industry conferences that the board may participate in. We also accounted for district holidays and other religious observances, as well as school holiday breaks when we were choosing dates for the proposed meeting schedule. Anywhere that there's an exception on the proposed schedule, there's an annotation that explains what the change was. You'll notice that there's a number of them on the schedule. I did want to call out just a few things. I did individually send out the calendar to board members about a week ago for input. But since then, just a couple of things I wanted to make sure you're aware of that's on the schedule that's before you tonight. First, for January, you'll see that there's 3 board meetings proposed. January 9th and 23rd are the regular typical meetings we have. The 30th, we're looking to add one more, and that's so that we can continue on track with our strategic planning process. And then in March, we also have 3 board meetings scheduled. The 5th and the 19th are our regular typical schedule. And then the 14th is our board retreat date. And that will be a full day meeting for the board and staff. And then we did add 2 additional watershed committee meetings. One is on February 29th and one is on October 17th. And this is to accommodate additional work on the watershed recreation management plan. And there was interest from the board in ensuring that we had adequate meetings scheduled for that. So that's been added as well. And then the final thing, we do have a meeting scheduled for November 5th. That is the same date as the presidential election. I did make this realization after publishing the agenda packet, but staff do recommend looking to change that meeting date. Wednesday, November 6th is an option that week where we don't appear to have any conflicts. This would just allow for the public to ensure they have time to vote, not have to choose between attending the meeting or not. And obviously there may be a lot of attention on that date.
Right, that too.
And that too, certainly. And so tonight we're asking the board to adopt the draft 2024 schedule and provide any final direction to us on any modifications that may be needed. And we'll go ahead and add those when we finalize.
With specifically the recommendation on the 5th, bumping that a day.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the proposed board calendar.
Well, are there any board comments about the calendar?
I do have one comment.
Okay.
So, and this is gonna be specific to the special watershed committee meetings with the rec management plan. They're not called out. They're called out, looks like a daytime meeting. I'd like to request that we have just the special meeting on the rec management plan moved to the evening on the 29th of February.
Okay. And just the one on the 29th, not the one on the 17th
of October.
Yeah.
I think as of right now, I'm okay with just the 29th.
Okay. And we
for
can
that.
reassess that later. Yeah. Okay.
Any other board comments?
I think we all approved reviewing our committee structure and meeting policy around having special board meetings like we do. And I think we talked about having that review around this time. I think it was December, January. And there are, I also believe, somewhat separately, a whole bunch of policy items that we've discussed over the year. So I think we should probably have those internal policy discussions, including how much folks get paid for coming to meetings and how we think about how to pay folks. We definitely talked about having a review of our committee structure and special board meetings. So that may impact the schedule a little bit.
So we have had that discussion at the beginning of this year, and then again in the middle of the year. Is it the interest then of the board for us to bring that back for as an agendized item so that we can have a?
I thought we seconded that in our last meeting, but maybe not. But yeah, that's my recommendation.
Okay.
In January? I just want to give staff time to
Sure,
be
January
prepared.
would be good.
Thank you. And I will say that we are planning on bringing a couple of the policies, in particular the board compensation policy, to the first FAC meeting of the year in January. So that's already being anticipated. If there are other particular policies that are of interest, we can certainly entertain those, and would love to hear that from the board.
I have a comment. I'd just like to compliment you on this. It's the finest most explained presentation of the schedule, proposed schedule that I've seen in the 20 years I've been here. And I particularly appreciate the footnoted comments on the back page, because it just saves dozens of questions about what the thinking is. So thank you very much. You did a great job.
Thank you. And I appreciate all the help of my team members who flagged all the dates we needed to be aware of. So
Yeah, it's a complicated, there's a lot of moving parts for a calendar this far in advance. I think the only one item that I just want to flag is in the notes, number one, that the regular sessions begin at 7:30 p.m. and we've been regularly starting at 6:30. Do we need to clarify that? I know you've got as a sort of a standing caveat that they start at 5 p.m., but just, so that folks can
Do you want me to address
plan into the future, I think it'd be helpful to.
So we have addressed this before. We did change the regular start time this year. We do put as early as 5 p.m. because there are occasions when we might start our meeting, our regular meeting early, sometimes for closed session items to happen prior to the open session portion of the meeting. And it's stated this way so that we don't have to call out a special meeting to start a little bit earlier, but we do want to note, and we could make it more clear if it needs to be, that our regular start time is 6:30 unless the board otherwise directs.
I mean, to be clear, Monty, that's what it does say, right? Regular open sessions will begin at 6:30, not 7:30.
I'm looking at the.
are you looking at the published item or the
maybe
one
I'm
that I
looking at-
sent you? Yeah, an earlier draft may have said 7:30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
My bad.
No worries.
Looking at an old transmission.
I do
Okay,
remember that.
There we go.
edit, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for, again, showing your excellence here and noting where there's been a small change. Okay. Any other board comments on the calendar? Okay, can I get a motion to adopt the proposed calendar for 2024?
Now I will make the motion to adopt the proposed calendar for 2024 with the change of the November 5th meeting to November 6th.
Second.
Okay, could we get a roll call vote? Okay.
Yes, but do you want to take a
Oh,
public
yes.
comment first?
Yes.
Okay, I do have one, Mr. Larry Minikis.
I sincerely do not mean to disrupt this process, but please consider the Watershed Committee meetings. 1:30 has always been an oddball time in the afternoon, and people have complained, not this person, but people have complained about making it's very difficult for them to come to that meeting, and perhaps doing it either in the morning or early evening in the future. It's a really difficult time for people. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Is there a reason why, I mean, not to go backwards here because we're so close, but at 1:30 isn't, all the rest of the meetings start at 9:30.
Yeah, it is. I was wondering that myself. I don't know the history there. I think from, a staff having them all at 9:30 would make sense. Customers know, and they don't have to think which committee is the one-off one. So,
Sounds good to me.
I would prefer that too, because
yeah,
when it jumps around, it's very hard for me to keep track.
yeah, I think that'd probably be at this point a good refinement.
However,
Ron's not here for me to bounce it off, but
I do
feel pretty
recall,
safe to,
I think the reason is this. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a technical advisory committee. Yeah.
There is, yes, but those are usually on Friday.
But they're at 1:30, right?
No.
they're in
No.
the morning. They
They're in the
can
morning, okay.
conflict at times with
Because the thing I
officers.
remember is it was something about, I think, about outside folks, outside agencies attending or something like that. That's kind of what I recall.
Yeah, it would be good to see if there's any conflicts the watershed staff have with all the so many different various groups. at
Yeah,
this day and time, so.
I think if the board did want to adopt it at 9:30, I think it's a safe call at this point. And if there were something, we could revisit it.
I would prefer that.
I think I'm fine either way, but I wonder, at the same time, Sean's not here, at a deference to something we may be overlooking. I wonder whether we should punt on this and hold
Well,
something. I want to be respectful that there may be
I
something we
like
don't know.
that recommendation from Director Smith. I mean, it's just, I think on this one that we could adopt it.
I think so. Can always be changed.
Yeah.
Approved pending further review and come back to us if you want to change it. So 9:30 sounds great.
Okay. Do we need a new motion? Molly, do we need a new motion with that?
I think it's just amending or, you know, as amended, as long as everybody, the first and the second agree with that as a friendly amendment to the motion, we can proceed on that basis.
Agreed.
So to clarify, it's to adopt the calendar with the turned off my own mic, and then a modification to the start time for watershed.
In the
I
watershed.
think Sean is on the line if we do want to get input. So he's not. Okay, never mind.
Okay. And then the
That's
addition
on the
to
29th, changing it to.
And then the 29th would be an evening meeting, as I
and I
understand.
think that encompasses everything. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can you please repeat the motion?
Yes. So the motion is to adopt the calendar in the package with the following changes, Terry. Change the meeting on November 5th to November 6th. Change the watershed meeting start time from 1:30 p.m. to 9:30 a.m. With the exception of the 29th meeting, that would be an evening meeting. Do we want to specify start time for that?
6:30 sounds fine, unless there's.
6:30 start time.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
And we've already we've had our motion in a second. So now
Make
we
roll
can
call.
go for the roll call vote. Thank you,
Yes,
Terry.
thank you.
Public
Direct,
comment?
are there any further public comments? No, there aren't any further public comments. Thank you. Wait, hold on. I just missed it. Okay, sorry. I just want to double check I didn't miss anyone. Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Vice President Kush,
Aye.
and President Schmidt.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, we have future board and committee meetings.
Yes, next week there are two committee meetings, the Watershed Committee on Tuesday and the Operations Committee meeting on Friday. The following week on the 19th is the last Board of Directors meeting of the year. And I believe I'm not familiar with any external meetings this month, except for probably I'm sorry.
Wallace Bay Watershed Foundation is on the 7th.
Yes, thank
this
you.
Thursday.
And also then the NBWA, I believe their first meeting is the first Friday of January. And that's all I have. Oh, another one.
I don't, Larry. I feel like there was an agreement to have something in person, but that's about it.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that, we are going to adjourn to closed session.
And I don't see anyone for public comment on the closed session items.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, can you mic that? Can you drop the mic? Appreciate it. All right. Are you ready? Okay. So
Ready.
Hold on. Okay.
Okay, we reconvened from our closed session at 8:45 with no reportable actions. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a good evening.
Thank you.